Shelby Cooke here and Will Schofield. We are excited to start season 3 of Filmish Chats. How exciting! And today we're going to do something a little bit different from our typical episodes. You might have heard a couple months back, Neve, Brooke, and I did an episode on the London Film Festival. And we talked about the films from the London Film Festival that we watched. And we kind of really liked that casual style of talking about new releases and more contemporary films. So me and Will today are going to be discussing some of the potential Oscar nominated films. I believe the nominations come out tomorrow as we're recording this. So we're recording it in advance. I think we're going to prophesize some nominations. But yeah, we're going to discuss some of the films that are on the awards trail now. And we're going to talk both about films that we really liked and we are very glad to see are in the award circuit and potentially going to the Oscars. And then talk about some films that we wish we would have been able to see and some opinions on some of the other films that we might not have liked as much. So I'll go first. I think one of the films, and I talked about this in the London Film Festival episode, which I am so happy that this film is getting the recognition that it deserves, is Reisu, wait, I'm going to say it right. Risukai Hamaguchi. I'm very sorry if I butchered that. I practiced it before. I really did. I'm sorry. Drive My Car. So this film, I think, is one of the best films that I've ever seen. The first time when I watched it at the London Film Festival, and when I noticed that it had a 3-hour timestamp, I was like, absolutely not. 3 hours? No way. But the film is sort of separated into these 3 different acts. Sort of the prologue of the movie is like the first hour before it goes into this more the actual story of this theater director goes to a different place to direct this adaptation of one of Chekhov's plays. And the first act is the prologue to the story. That's about an hour. So once you get past that first hour, then there's like a whole nother story starting. So it's almost like a whole different movie. So what I really loved about this film was how very quiet and contemplative it is without being boring. I think there's just enough of really great conversations and really, really, really wonderful monologues that the actors give that keeps you so engrossed in the story. And the performances are so incredible that you just can't look away. Because I haven't seen it since the London Film Festival, but when I did watch it, it was one of those things that was on in the morning and I had to watch it while I was getting ready to go to work. Oh my God. And so I was trying to get ready and trying to watch it and watch the subtitles and figure out what was going on. And I honestly couldn't look away. I was like, I don't even want to go to work. I just want to keep watching this movie because it's spectacular. And for a movie that feels like nothing happens in it, it's pretty much the majority of this movie is rehearsals for this play. It just flows so effortlessly and has this perfect balance between being really quiet and slow and having enough to entertain you and draw your attention in. So I'm really happy that this film is getting the attention that it deserves. I'm hoping for a Best Picture nomination. Will it happen? Probably not, because it's a foreign language film, but hopefully with Parasite breaking that barrier, hopefully now it will go forward and we'll have more international films as Best Picture nominations. But of course, that's just the nature of the Oscars, as being very American and very white. So we'll see what happens with the Oscars. Will, do you have one?
Yeah, sure. Well, you talking about the whole 3-act structure and the kind of becoming a different movie a third of the way in, really made me think of The Last Duel. the new Ridley Scott movie that came out and absolutely tanked, largely because, well, for a few reasons. One, it was released in the middle of the pandemic. Um, Two, it was part of the Disney Fox merger, and so Disney really gave it very little attention. And three, it's a little bit hard to swallow, and I can completely understand a lot of people coming away from that being like, "Well, yeah, that was all right," just kind of yawning. And but it is the historical story about the last judiciary duel that took place in France, like the last king or monastically sanctioned man-on-man fight to settle a legal dispute in France in about the 1350s. And it is a case where two rival lords who had known each other for years, one accused the other of raping their wife. And then
when that happens.
what happens? Yeah, just how it was back in the day, and the first hour of the movie when I was watching felt incredibly bizarre because stuff would happen so quickly. Like there would be a scene of characters talking, and then the next scene it would be the same characters talking in a different location, and then halfway through you'd realize, oh, this is 5 months later. And things just kept skipping around, and it felt really bizarre. And I kind of struggled to figure out. It was pretty easy to follow, but it felt very a weird way of doing it until it reaches the part where I've forgotten the character's name, but Jodie Comer, Matt Damon's wife, accuses Adam Driver's character of the assault, and then suddenly the words Act 2 come on screen, and it cuts back to the beginning of the movie, and you see, and the whole first act is told from Matt Damon's perspective, and you see all of the events take place again, but Adam Driver's perspective. And so you see all of the same scenes, but they're kind of the tone is just slightly different, and you'll see events that Matt Damon alluded to but weren't shown, and you'll hear Adam Driver talking about stuff and getting angry, and you realize, oh, I've seen that already. That's not how that happened. And that was quite an interesting way of doing it. But it wasn't and you slowly kind of piece together, oh, this is like he's trying to literally present a historical account, the conflicting sources, all these different arguments, how did it happen? And that was fine and good. It didn't feel that particularly. It didn't really have much of a heart to it until the third act, where it told the events from the wife's perspective, Jodie Comer's, and suddenly it had so much more weight to it, because before it just kind of felt like two lords feuding over land and money and women and whatnot. But then suddenly the human element of the wife and the depiction that, yes, this is, in looking at it as a historical event, the rape is probably forgotten. It's more seen as for the two feuding lords and the duel. But that final sequence added so much weight, so much reality, and kind of grounded it a lot. It was just a very odd experience to watch, to be honest, because it felt that it was structured so differently from so many other works I've seen. And I can completely understand people coming away from it and just not really liking it. And to be honest, I'm not sure I think it was my favorite of the year, but I've thought about it a lot since, and it felt like a very different film. And yeah, I would be annoyed if it didn't get nominated for something. And the sets and costumes and stuff were immaculate. That was crazy.
Yeah. Did you see House of Gucci?
I didn't. I desperately wanted to, but I couldn't find it anywhere.
I haven't seen House of Gucci either, but that's just, I didn't realize that this last duel was Ridley Scott too. So he had 2 movies come out this year, which is,
I didn't realize House of Gucci was Ridley Scott.
Oh yeah, House of Gucci is Ridley Scott. So obviously I wonder if that was because the way that the Oscars are structured, for anyone who doesn't know, is it's very much like a business model, and it's about the marketing of a film. So I would presume since Ridley Scott had 2 films come out this year, he had to choose which one he wanted, or production companies, his PR team had to decide which one was going to go to the Oscars. And I think House of Gucci went to a lot of those film festivals.
Adam Driver starred in both, didn't he?
Yeah. So that's what I was. That's what.
Yeah.
It was Ridley Scott and Adam Driver. It was their year.
Well, not according to the box office.
Oh yeah. Well, I guess House of Gucci did good, didn't it? I don't know. I didn't go see it.
I don't know. Yeah, I've heard very mixed things from reviews, but I imagine it probably did all right. It's a lot of big names in it. And
I mean, the only reason I would want to go see House of Gucci is for Lady Gaga, because I love Lady Gaga.
Yeah. I want to see Jared Leto all done up in like a Star Wars character in his like cakes on layers of makeup. Doing a Super Mario impression from what I've heard.
Nice. It's like you were talking about this film, like all of a sudden the French accent just like came in. It was like it's a movie that's set in France, and then all of a sudden like one person has a French accent, and it's like that Timothy Chalamet movie The King, and then Robert Pattinson just like steals the entire movie because of his terrible French accent. It's so funny.
That's something I will say, actually. This movie, The Last Duel, is the first time I've ever seen Ben Affleck in a role where I thought he did a good job in that. It's the first time I've ever liked Ben Affleck in a movie, I think.
That's a big compliment for Ben Affleck.
Yeah. Because it's also Matt Damon and Ben's first, I think it's the first film they've written since Good Will Hunting.
Oh, they wrote it?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really surprising that it does say screenplay by Ben Affleck. That is really surprising that it didn't do better, because Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, everyone loves them.
Well, I find that a bit troubling how because Ridley Scott came out after it released and started blaming the damn Gen Zers and their iPads and only wanting to see superheroes and stuff, which
that's what all the directors do really now.
Yeah. I mean, there's some truth in there, but like, you don't have to come out and say it. That's not going to help your case at all, just making everyone annoyed.
But also, I don't like medieval films, so I'm not going to go see this movie because I don't like medieval films.
I think it's definitely a tough sell from the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, I love Jodie Comer, so that would be the only reason I would see it, because she's so beautiful. I think talking about the 3-act structure again, one of the films that I think is a bit of a sleeper film for the award season is The French Dispatch.
I completely forgot.
It has not gotten as many nominations as you would think for a Wes Anderson film.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that movie. I think that might be it's definitely one of my favorites. And when I came out, I thought that might be my new favorite. And I don't necessarily think it's the best, but I really enjoyed that movie.
I really enjoyed it too, because I thought it was an interesting structure, and it was an interesting storytelling method, and an interesting way of telling different narratives. But it really has, because I was looking at the BAFTA nominations, and I think it only has nominations for like the costuming and makeup or something like that, like just those smaller nominations, which is really surprising for a Wes Anderson.
Yeah, especially with so many like A-listers really doing a damn good job. Like, man, like I feel like Tilda Swinton in that, she does a lot of kind of oddball zany characters, especially in recent years. But I feel like this one really struck up. I don't know why I went with Tilda Swinton first, because she's like barely in it.
Yeah, but Tilda Swinton is an icon. That's why.
Yeah, totally. And you got is it Antonio Banderas? Yeah, Antonio Banderas doing his thing. And
I think that first one with the artist and Tilda Swinton, I guess, was she a journalist? She's
she was a journalist, and
I think that was my favorite act out of all.
I remember when I came out, that was my favorite. But thinking about it now, the final one about the food reviewer at the police station with like Ed Norton, I think his name's Kevin Michael Richardson's. I could be wrong about that. But That one is actually probably the one I've thought about the most in retrospect.
I
And it's really stayed with me.
I completely forgot about that one because I was thinking, what was the last one? Well, I couldn't remember what the last one was. So, but yeah, now that you say it, yeah, that one was fun.
I think it was just a really fun movie. I feel it was the most, every scene, every sequence felt so, Wes Anderson. It really felt like he thought about and constructed every shot, every scene. And he is like, he's a very meticulous planner in his films. But this one felt to the max almost. And it was just a lot of fun to watch, to be honest.
Yeah, it wasn't a difficult movie to watch, which is sometimes
totally
like it's nice to just be assaulted by beautiful visuals and just be like, I love cinema. Look how beautiful it is. Speaking of, oh wow, we're doing such great transitions here.
Yeah.
Speaking of very beautiful films, I would like to talk about Spencer.
Okay.
I hated Spencer.
Right.
To me, it was very much style over substance. It was a beautiful film. Don't get me wrong. I think it was a spectacularly beautiful film. It was beautifully shot. It was beautifully directed. But there was a lot of sequences that were just felt like perfume commercials. There's this whole sequence of Kristen Stewart running through this house and through the gardens. And she's just in all these different Princess Diana outfits. And she's just kind of flowing herself around and posing and all these things. And it was very bizarre. And I was just like, what is this? This is a perfume commercial. Like I'm waiting for the man on the horse to come riding by to sweep her off her feet. It was so weird. And I just felt like those scenes just encompassed that whole movie for me. Like there was no substance to that movie. And I feel like that's kind of the same way I felt about Jackie. I think I liked Jackie more than Spencer, but Spencer was just really, it felt very superficial.
I haven't seen it, but I imagine based on your description now, it's a case of like everyone has an idea of Diana, everyone has like an image of them in their mind, and I'm sure the filmmaker wanted to, regardless of how in depth it got and how biographical and how realistic the depiction was, there's probably always a layer of wanting to keep true to people's vision of her, right?
But see, that was kind of the issue, it was playing a lot on fiction. It was playing on this fictionalized version of Diana. And it was so dramatic. It was so over the top and so dramatic. And there was really no nuances about this movie at all. There was nothing like, I can understand like the power dynamics between the royal family and Princess Diana. Like that would have been really interesting, more of this nuance. But it was just like, Kristen Stewart was sitting at the dinner table, just like sobbing her eyes out and just being so dramatic. And everyone's just looking at her. I'm just like, this movie is just like, there's no nuances to it. It's just, this woman's crazy. That's like what this movie was like communicating. This woman is completely unstable. And like, sure, she was, but they're not giving her any agency as like a person, which she was. And she did have a lot of agency in reclaiming her identity and herself within this terrible toxic marriage and this toxic family that she was in. But in this movie, it was just like, she was this damsel in distress and had no agency to do anything. And she was just sitting around and crying and throwing up. And it was just, it was so dramatic. I really didn't like it. And I will admit, I think Kristen Stewart did a very good job. This is probably going to get me a lot of hate, but I'm not the biggest Kristen Stewart fan. I really don't like Kristen Stewart. I think she's very one-dimensional in her acting. I will say she did a very good job as Princess Diana. And she did a good job for what the screenplay offered her. But I just don't think it was it wasn't a very nuanced and interesting portrayal of Princess Diana. And it really was just, I think it just really did her character and her person. Like she's a real person, like did her biography really terribly. And I just didn't like that film. It just rubbed me the wrong way.
Speaking of very visually interesting, but not sure it said an awful lot. I saw Belle first yesterday, and so I'm still letting things kind of settle in, and I definitely did enjoy it. I think visually it was lovely. It was really nice. And there's a lot of shots that I remember, and a lot of sequences actually that I remember sitting in the cinema and thinking, wow, this is really just nice to look at.
Mhm.
And especially because I think it was filmed during COVID and through the course of lockdowns, and you can tell there's a sequence in a church where it opens with just showing the church outside, and then all of the interior shots, it's just extreme close-ups on their heads, so you can't see anything around them. Um, and also the main street that most of it takes place on very much felt like a set, to be
Mhm.
honest. But all in all, it's a good movie. I believe it's autobiographical of
Yeah.
Kenneth Branagh, or at least he said it's his most autobiographical. Um, and it's largely about it's set in the 60s during the Troubles in Northern Ireland when their Catholic Protestant rivalries and kind of tensions in the communities are heating up. It's on a street largely Protestant with a few Catholic residents, and the young Protestant boy Billy, kind of coming of age while also coming to terms with the fact that his people, the Protestants, seem to be the one hurting, trying to figure out why do they hate the Catholics? What's going on? Are they actually bad people? Are they good people? His dad is very clearly not choosing a side, or at least not choosing the Protestant side, which is getting him a lot of hate from the Protestant community. There's a lot of underlying tensions, and that's what the movie is largely about: underlying tension.
Mhm.
And there is a real sense of kind of nervousness throughout the whole thing. What's going to happen? Is it going to get worse? Is it going to get better? But the issue I feel with it being autobiographical is that, frankly, it seems that not a lot actually did happen in Kenneth Branagh's young childhood. Um, it, I don't think there's anything wrong with it centering on that kind of feeling of tension throughout, and the family dynamics and the slow cooker build up throughout the film. But there's I don't think there was ever really much of a sense of catharsis in the end in terms of plot coming away from it. I'm not really sure what it said other than prejudice is bad and the Troubles were a rough time and stuff. And again, maybe if you lived through it and actually experienced it, you'd look at that and say, wow, this is a really good, accurate representation of what it felt like, what it was like being there. A love letter to Belfast and the time period and stuff. But beyond that, I don't think it particularly had a lot to say. I could see it being shown in like a school or something as part of a history module, or perhaps in like a film studies thing for the visual aspects, but just as a film to watch, either to for the emotional catharsis or just to kill time or whatever, I don't think it really hit the nail. But that said, I do think it could definitely be a contender for one of the best ones of the year, from what I've seen.
It got a lot of BAFTA nominations, which, again, going back to Spencer, everyone was like shook because Spencer got absolutely nothing at the BAFTAs, which I guess, I don't know what we can read into that, but I mean, maybe I am the one. Everyone loves Spencer, and I feel like I'm the only person that was like, I hated that film. So maybe I am right ultimately.
Vindicated.
I know, right? We had some good streaming films this year too, like Netflix, and I guess Amazon had a couple of good films. And I think the biggest one from the streaming sector that's going to the Oscars is Power of the Dog by Jane Campion. Do you have any thoughts on that one?
I think I made a note of my thoughts actually on a little yellow post-it note. I could not help but compare it while watching it to There Will Be Blood.
Oh.
Which I maybe that's just me. Maybe it's
Yeah.
just the early 1900s Western aesthetic
Hmm.
blinded me. Maybe it's the kind of domineering Western hegemonic kind of protagonist in air quotes,
Hmm.
um, and the kind of relationship with the young man. Maybe it's all surface level stuff, but for me, I saw them both as kind of stories about these people living in these environment, the difficulties they face, and the emotions bubbling under the surface, like a slow burn kind of character study of these people. And There Will Be Blood is probably one of my favorite movies. I rewatch it. I can never get enough of it. It's one of those ones I can just rewatch endlessly. I think Power of the Dog did similar stuff similarly, but it never reached that same point because the ending of There Will Be Blood to me is like explosive. The catharsis from like the final scene. I'm not going to say it or spoil it, but it is such a fantastic like cathartic cap to the whole thing. Whereas by the time Power of the Dog is finished, it's set up
Hmm.
and stuff, and it's actually started to reach the point where it starts to build towards that emotion.
Hmm.
It kind of, to me, it felt like it ended before it actually reached um before it had reached its height. I felt like it still had places that it could have gone, and kind
That's
of got
that's
lost in
really
the build up a bit.
interesting that you say that because I felt like it should have ended sooner. I
Really?
felt
Okay.
like it should have been more ambiguous in its ending because I feel like
Mm,
the ending that it did give was very, you know, you got what was going on. I think that scene when Benedict Cumberbatch's character and his like apprentice are in the barn together, I think that should have been where it ended because that was such
mm.
a powerful scene. And if it would have just cut out there without any explanation, I would have personally, I could see why most people wouldn't like that because people don't like having to think about movies. They don't want to have to think about this ambiguous ending. But I think that would have been such a brilliant ending. Like I would have been
No,
like, whoa, oh my God.
I hadn't thought about that, but I'm totally on board. That would
Yeah.
have been like such a. I would have. I would have like I wouldn't have understood it if I'm
Mhm.
honest. If I'm being entirely honest with myself, I think I would have sat with it for like a few days, and then suddenly I would have thought about it enough, and it would just snap, and I'd be like oh my god,
Well,
because I
and
can be a bit slow at these things.
but that's what I like about it is like, you don't I like films where you aren't told the ending.
Yeah.
You have to, as a viewer, have to decide how it ends. And I feel like I've had this conversation before with Sound of Metal, which I think was a very clear ending, but obviously the person I was talking to didn't think it was a clear ending, where he just sort of sits on this park bench in Paris and just I think he turns his hearing aids off at the end of Sound of Metal. And there's really no ending. Like, is he going to go back with his girlfriend? What is he going to do now? Um, and I like those type of endings where you have to
Mm.
write the ending for the characters. And I think that would have been such a brilliant ending for Power of the Dog if you didn't know which direction it was going to go in. Because there were so many different directions that because I was watching that scene, I was
Mm.
like, what is gonna happen? But then sort of when when she sort of tells you what happens at the end through this sort of epilogue. I didn't think the epilogue was really necessary.
Mm.
But I agree. I think it has very, very compelling character dynamics and that sort of tension of the unspokenness is really palpable. I have a hard time understanding Jane Campion's movies. I think they're very, very beautiful, and I really am so attached to her visual filmmaking style and her way that she communicates through visuals. But I think I might be just too thick to understand like the nuances of her films. But I know that they're there. Like I appreciate her as a director, but I just don't understand them. Um, so I really enjoyed Power of the Dog. I think it would be a film that I would have to watch multiple times to really get it because
Mm.
the first time you watch it, I think you're just so confused. I was confused by Benedict Cumberbatch's character because I didn't, and it was speaking of Benedict Cumberbatch, he was freaking brilliant in that movie. He was so good for playing this character that is so outside of his wheelhouse
That's true, actually.
because he either plays like the really intelligent smart person, which is sort of like, it sort of did have that Sherlock Holmes type of feel to it, this character that he was playing, but it was this very brute masculine character who in the quiet of his own space was very feminine and oh my God, it was just so brilliant. I think Benedict Cumberbatch was brilliant in that movie.
Totally.
Yeah.
Speaking of being too thick to understand, I feel like I didn't understand Licorice Pizza, to be honest.
I haven't seen it.
It's I really love Paul Thomas Anderson,
Mhm.
as I said with There Will Be Blood. Love Boogie Nights. Love Phantom Thread. It's like a coming of age. See, I'm even struggling to like describe it because I feel like there was some wider message or point or something at the end that I again missed, because I feel like there has been that with all of his films. It's never like a stated thing, but they're all kind of, or at least a lot of them are kind of slow burn character studies where you watch these people, you watch the events of their life kind of grow, change, and stuff, and at the end there is kind of a cathartic realization that both they experience and you kind of experience at the same time about how things are going to be. And it had the moments that implied those, but I just didn't really get what it was saying necessarily. And I enjoyed watching it. It's a fun movie. It has a lot of fun sequences and scenes and stuff. I think the two leads, well, Philip Seymour Hoffman's kid, I've forgotten his name, who plays the main boy, I think was a little bit rough around the edges, but he's quite young, so I'm like willing to give him the benefit of the doubt.
I did not know that was Philip Seymour Hoffman's kid.
Yeah. I remember telling my dad actually after watching that, and he was like, that makes so much sense. He feels very similar to Philip Seymour Hoffman's character in Boogie Nights to me. And I've forgotten the main girl who's I think she's a Hain or
Haim. She's one of the
Haim.
Haim sisters.
Yeah, well, they're all in that as well. They play her sister in the movie.
Oh, nice.
I think she did a really good job. But yeah, no, I feel like I'm almost worried to give my opinion and review on it, because I feel like I'll just be like scribbling nonsense, and the people who actually understand it will look at me like, what the hell are you talking about? So I think it could be, I think that would be worth a rewatch. But I do think it was, I enjoyed it for what it was, even not maybe grasping the subtleties of it.
Well,
yeah, I think he's back to form.
I think the last film that I want to talk about is The Worst Person in the World, which I think worst person in the world, more like best person in the world. I love that film. That was terrible. This is why I don't do puns. So The Worst Person in the World is the last film in Joachim Trier's Oslo trilogy.
Oh, I had no idea about it.
I didn't know that either. And I just learned that. I went to the Lincoln Center over the weekend and saw The Worst Person in the World there. And they did a Q&A with Joachim and then Renita Reins, who is the main actress. And it was a very insightful Q&A. And I think one of the things that Joachim said about his films is he doesn't conform to genre, and he doesn't ever want he wants his audience to realize they're watching a movie. So he plays with form a lot, and he plays with these weird structures. And in particular, he was talking about this sort of magical realism that happens in The Worst Person in the World, where this moment where she just stops time in order to reflect on if she wants to be with this other person and break up with her long-term boyfriend. And I just thought that was such a wonderful encapsulation of why I love this film so much, because it is very much an art film that's messy and doesn't make sense and doesn't have any sort of form to it. But it's just so beautiful and so perfect in the way that it's executed that it feels like all of those messy, unstructured things that most films would be criticized for having random narrators and these magical realism moments and these random moments that don't need to be included. They don't serve the narrative in any part. That's what makes this film so perfect. And I just love this film so much. I think it has so much nuance, and so it just speaks so effortlessly to, I don't even want to say the modern female experience, because what's really great about it is like the main character, Julie, she is like a really bad quote unquote feminist. And so it sort of embraces that like Fleabag style of I'm the bad feminist, like where it's sort of like I'm just going to do what I want to do. And I don't really care who I hurt along the way. But that's what makes it such a brilliant, like, that's what makes you a brilliant feminist, is that you are just like, I'm just going to embrace these masculine traits and just do what I want to do and not care. And it was just such a great characters. And it's just such Renita Ryan's performance is, I think, I feel like she should win best actress. Will she be nominated? I don't even know if she'll be nominated. I feel like she should win because it was, honestly, in my opinion, the nuance of her performance and the subtleties of her performance for someone who has never done a film before. This is her first feature film. Yeah.
Wow.
It was out of this world. I rewatched the trailer just before we started recording this, and I was like, oh my God, like, she is so brilliant. She is so good. I am obsessed with her. I love her. I think she's the most beautiful person I've ever seen. And I love this movie, and I think everyone should watch it. And it's fun, but it's also really, it hits you hard because I think it really does. It has this universal experience to it where anyone can relate to the characters. And it is in many ways, it does remind me a lot of Fleabag, where Fleabag is really funny. And like, you have moments where you're like dying laughing because you're like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And then all of a sudden she just punches you in the face, and it's like, and then you're sobbing. You're like, it's just that perfect combination of comedy and drama. And it's fun and it's whimsical, and it makes you love cinema. It's like, makes you love the artistry of like art films and just playing with form and playing with structures and narratives and not conforming to tropes or genres. And it's a lot of fun. I think it should be nominated for Best Picture, but again, because it's a foreign language film, I don't know if it will.
It's definitely, it's at the top of the list of films I have not seen but want to, alongside probably Tragedy of Macbeth, but I can't be bothered to play for Apple TV. No way. I think my favorite film of the year that I don't think is going to get any nominations in anything, because barely anyone remembers it, even me, is Pig, with Nicolas Cage and Alex Wolff. This film is a drama and a little bit of backstory. Many years ago, after a Dungeons and Dragons game, me and my friends got very drunk and watched Nicolas Cage's 2006 The Wicker Man, and it was the funniest movie I've ever seen in my life. And so since then, we have done a pretty much bi-monthly drink tonight, where we watch a Nicolas Cage film, and we've watched so much of his filmography now. And what I have discovered that has blown my mind is that Nicolas Cage is a fantastic, I think he's a genius talent, genuinely, because yes, he is ridiculous and over the top so much, but he does the exact amount that is needed to make a film entertaining. If you watch, the more boring the film is, the more wild he gets, and it makes it so much better. And then when you watch a film that's genuinely good of his own merits, he knows when to just sit back and let it happen. And Willie's Wonderland was a horror movie that came out, I think, last year. That's just completely off the wall and hilarious. And he is just a completely silent, stoic protagonist in that. It's great. And Pig, drama, he is just a fantastic lead. It is about a truffle farmer who is a truffle hunter, sorry, who is walled himself off from society. He lives in a little cabin in the woods. His only contact is Alex Wolff, a rich young kind of wannabe playboy philanthropist who comes in with his Porsche every week and like buys the truffles off him. That and his little truffle hunting pig. And one night, the door of his shack is kicked in, and a pair of masked people kidnap the pig. And it's about him and his kind of journey into the city to try and relocate this truffle pig, his old pride and joy. And it sounds like it could be like a Disney-esque buddy road trip comedy. It is one of the heaviest films I've seen in my life.
It's like Okja.
Literally, it is. It's so melancholic, and every scene is just so kind of quiet and slightly sad as you slowly kind of unravel this man's life and figure out how he became the Shun. And I don't believe there's any like flashbacks. There's no like time skips or anything. It just kind of follows these characters and their interactions with other people. And it just feels very slow and very quiet and very well paced. And I don't know, compared to so much of the bombast and stuff, the films that are popular now are the sequels and the reboots and the big blockbusters and stuff, and that's always been the way, but it feels now more than ever that is what's making the money. And even those that are more art house and subtle and stuff are still incredibly bright and colorful and about plot and action and characters and all this stuff, which again is not a bad thing. But this just felt, I don't know, to me it felt different than so much of what I've watched this year and so much of what we've already discussed. Just as a quiet little, almost forgettable film about very little that's just really it's stayed with me so much, and I just find it very disappointing that I've heard barely since I watched it. I've heard almost no one speak about it, and I really don't think it's going to get any recognition, and that just makes me very sad because I think
I never even heard of it.
Really,
yeah,
man. Me and my friend went to see it, and it was only at one, I think, picture house in London, picture house cinema, and then we went to see it, and it was like half full, I think. Which
well,
is like
there
a
are
good
people
turnout,
there.
but yeah, exactly. It was nice that there were people watching it and stuff, but yeah, it breaks my heart's a strong word, but it does make me sad that not more people will probably see it, especially because when you look at Nicolas Cage's filmography, it's such a bizarre left field film. But yeah, man, there's so many other films. Being the Ricardo, I'm gonna speed run a couple. Being the Ricardos, I found really fun. I was surprised how enjoyable that was. I don't think it was particularly treading new ground. June, I think, is awesome. I think that doesn't win CG and stuff. Oh, I wanted to quickly ask you, No Way Home, do you think that's going to get any like proper, it's got like nominations like CG and stuff. Do you think that's going to get any big boy director picture?
Oh, I don't think so, because the Oscars are not going to, there's no way that the Oscars are going to let a superhero movie get like it could be the best superhero movie of all time. The Oscars are going to be like, no way. I mean, it will get special effects and all of that jazz, but
yeah. To be fair, the best superhero movie of all time, Into the Spider-Verse, got best animated feature its year. So
you know, I haven't seen No Way Home, but isn't it like sort of the same plot as Into the Spider-Verse?
It's all multiverse Spider-Man swinging around. It's all, man. They probably did. They probably thought, because like it's all based on the comics and stuff, but they probably did see like, oh, the Spider-Verse one is done better than anything that we've ever done before. Let's just do that. It's crazy to me that like, I think it's like best CG or something. There are 4 Marvel movies that came out this year that are all nominated. They're all going against each other. There's Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Eternals, and Spider-Man. And like, I genuinely feel they just shoved those ones into those awards, the ones that no one's really that passionate about, just to be like, yeah,
Well,
there you go. Don't yell at us on
and
Twitter too
they're
hard.
they're the awards that you have to have money to have money
Yeah.
to get CGI, otherwise it's
Yeah.
gonna look terrible. So, and of course,
Yeah.
Disney's going to have the money to do that, and Marvel's going to have the money to do that. So it's not surprised that they're all
I feel
competing with
like
each other.
this podcast, this thing is a safe space where I can admit I thought No Way Home was good. I didn't think anything else about it. Everyone I see online, all of my friends are raving about how amazing it was. It just felt it. All Marvel is the same to me, to be
Yeah,
perfectly honest. It's never bad, but it's just never any that much more. I think Andrew Garfield.
I love
Oh,
Andrew Garfield.
Tick Tick Boom! I didn't even talk about Tick Tick Boom.
Oh,
I loved Tick Tick Boom.
yeah.
I don't even like musicals that much, but Tick Tick Boom is really good.
So when I was younger, I was obsessed with Rent. That was my favorite thing of all time. I saw like the touring company. I forced my parents to go see Rent, like touring across the US after it closed on Broadway, because Anthony Rapp and Adam Pascal, who were the original Mark and Roger in the Broadway production, they were doing the US tour, and I made my parents drive me all across the East
You were a
Coast.
roadie for Rent.
Yes, I loved Rent so much. So, obviously, because I was a massive Rent fangirl, I knew about Jonathan Larson, I knew about his other plays, and I knew Tick Tick Boom. And then all of a sudden, out of the clear blue sky, I just saw that Netflix is doing a Tick Tick Boom, and I was like Jonathan Larson Tick Tick Boom, and I was like freaking out. I was like, oh my god! I was like, oh my god! I was freaking out. I was so hyped, and I think it was really, really good. I did enjoy it. I love Andrew Garfield. I don't think Andrew Garfield can do wrong in anything.
Did you know he learned to sing for that role? Like he couldn't sing before. That's and he's so good.
I love him. I just think Andrew Garfield is such a sleeper actor. Like people, I think every so often he'll get like people will start like recognizing his talent, and then he'll just fly under the radar for like a few more years. And he's so incredible.
I love him so much. He's absolutely the highlight of No Way Home, and that movie has like everyone in it. That one has Willem Dafoe as like the main antagonist, and yet still Andrew Garfield somehow manages to completely steal it. It really is the Doctor Who to Academy Award pipeline, I think. That's how it all goes. I think that's singing Andrew Garfield's praises is perhaps a good way to go. I didn't see Jackass Forever, but I reckon that's the best. That's my guess for Best Picture, to be honest.
Is it? I think it's too late though. It's too late for it to come out.
Oh, next year.
It will be next year. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up then. And we'll see you again. Hopefully the next time we see you will be either another one of these sort of chilled, lay back review type of podcasts, or we'll get back into our film analysis structured episodes. But in the meantime, if you want to follow us on Instagram, we're at films_east. Same with Twitter, and on Facebook, just Film East. If you wanted to get in contact with us, you can contact us through any of the social medias, or our email is contactfilmeast@gmail.com. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.